Jeffrey Epstein, 1953-2019, was not merely a financier. He was a meticulously crafted enigma, a work of social and financial engineering that defied the logic of American meritocracy. Born in Brooklyn, New York, his social ascent was both meteoric and profoundly opaque. His career took a 180-degree turn, jumping from teaching math and science at the prestigious Dalton School, a position he held for 2 years, from 1974 to 1976, to the aggressive world of Wall Street. This transition, facilitated by a wealthy client's father, proved pivotal. His brief stint at the investment bank Bear Stearns served as a laboratory for high-level connections. It was there, according to investigative analyses, that Epstein internalized the real hierarchy of power. Technical knowledge meant little without the correct relational capital, and money served, primarily, as an instrument of influence, silence, and social camouflage. Starting in the 1980s, with the founding of his own secretive investment fund, Intercontinental Capital Management, Epstein consolidated his legend. He claimed to manage the fortunes of ultra-select billionaires, notably fashion magnate Leslie Wexner, whose power of attorney Epstein held for years. The structure of his private business operated in a gray zone of financial regulation, making it extraordinarily difficult for any standard tax, audit, or regulatory investigation to track the movement of capital. The primary source of his substantial fortune, estimated at $560 million at the time of his death, was never publicly and fully established, serving as the invisible cement to erect a life of calculated fascination and privilege. The money purchased a real estate empire that was, in itself, a manifestation of power: a $70 million townhouse in Manhattan, the opulent Palm Beach mansion, Florida, the isolated Zorro Ranch in New Mexico, and the geographical apex of his control, Little St. James, his private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, referred to in legal filings as the island where a criminal conspiracy was executed. Epstein cultivated proximity with high-caliber figures, prestigious scientists such as Stephen Hawking, heads of state, and politicians. He funded research at Harvard University and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, Media Lab, projecting the image of an engaged philanthropist. This facade of generosity was, in reality, the first and most effective layer of protection for his system. For the investigators, the central question resonated: how many levels of corruption can be concealed by the shield of extreme wealth? The first crack in the wall of impunity occurred in 2005, when the Palm Beach Police Department, Florida, initiated a preliminary investigation following multiple complaints from young people. The initial modus operandi involved seductive invitations for massages at the Palm Beach mansion, which quickly escalated into a pattern of systemic crime. The investigation progressed significantly, leading to a sealed grand jury indictment in 2007. However, in 2008, Epstein managed to broker a highly controversial non-prosecution agreement, NPA, under the supervision of the then U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, Alexander Alex Acosta. This deal, signed on August 21, 2008, was stitched behind closed doors and shrouded in extreme secrecy and controversy. It allowed Epstein to plead guilty to 2 state charges related to the solicitation of criminal activity involving a minor, resulting in an extraordinarily lenient sentence of only 13 months in a local Florida jail. Furthermore, he was granted the almost unprecedented privilege of a daily work release, allowing him to leave the jail for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, effectively turning his jail sentence into a monitored house arrest. The most damaging aspect of this agreement was the sweeping immunity clause, which absolutely shielded Epstein from future federal charges related to the crimes and, crucially, protected his potential co-conspirators and associates from any subsequent investigation. The document was signed without mandatory compliance with the Federal Crime Victims' Rights Act, which explicitly required consultation and consent from all known victims. This act represented a monumental failure of the judicial system, where political influence and extreme wealth were able to negotiate justice. The fierce criticism of Acosta's conduct was so intense that, in 2019, after being appointed as Secretary of Labor in the administration of President Donald Trump, he was forced to resign. During this period, Epstein not only maintained his life of staggering opulence, but also significantly refined his method of collecting secrets, using his private Boeing 727 jet, referred to in court documents as the primary mode of transport for the scheme, and his vast social capital as assets within his invisible fortress of influence. On July 6, 2019, just before sunrise, the world witnessed the long-awaited collapse of this fortress. Federal agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, and the New York Police Department, NYPD, acting under a new and thorough federal indictment, surrounded Epstein's 7-story mansion on the Upper East Side. The raid revealed the secret chamber of his criminal operation. Inside the art-lined walls and in various concealed locations, investigators found safes stuffed with cash in multiple currencies, piles of loose diamonds, and multiple passports with false identities, including one Austrian passport, evidencing a clear and active risk of immediate international flight. More damningly, the search uncovered a systematic archive of his operation. Thousands of photographs and documents of young people, many hidden behind a camouflage doorway, alongside surveillance, tapes and recording equipment that suggested the truth had always been there, encoded in physical and digital evidence, meticulously cataloged by Epstein himself. The sheer volume of material seized was alarming and confirmed the systemic nature of the enterprise. The formal indictment against Epstein was for conspiracy and related serious crimes, specifically involving crimes against young people, detailing a continuous modus operandi that spanned years, specifically from approximately 2002 to 2005, and potentially beyond. Victims described professional manipulation, disguised as mentorship or career opportunity, where promises of advancement converted into coercive control and systematic manipulation. The investigation became an unrelenting recovery of light onto a power scheme that had turned manipulation into an institutionalized routine. The weight of the evidence presented by the Southern District of New York was overwhelming, leading a federal judge to deny bail. In this circle of criminal activity and concealment, Ghislaine Maxwell, the heiress and socialite, emerged as the central figure. Prosecutors described her not as a passive accomplice, but as the chief recruiter, facilitator, and gatekeeper to Epstein's inner circle. Her social refinement and elite connections served to legitimize the financier's environment, making entry into his world attractive and seemingly safe for vulnerable youth. Her own family history, marked by the controversial death of her father, media magnate Robert Maxwell, served to contextualize a lifetime of extreme privilege and financial opacity. August 10, 2019. The news that followed the 2019 arrest was the height of the mystery, the controversy, and the public's institutional skepticism. Jeffrey Epstein was found deceased in his cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center, MCC, in Manhattan, with the official cause ruled as suicide by hanging. The explanation, however, unraveled within mere hours under public and investigative scrutiny. The facts ascertained by subsequent investigations revealed a chain of inadmissible failures within federal custody. Epstein had previously attempted suicide just weeks before, on July 23, 2019, leading to him being placed on suicide watch. Yet he was removed from this status days later. Crucially, the surveillance cameras near his cell and in the hallway were mysteriously inoperable that night, and the correctional officers, Tova Knoll and Michael Thomas, later admitted to falsifying the logs of required rounds, claiming they had conducted the mandated custody checks every 30 minutes when they were, in fact, sleeping and surfing the internet for a significant portion of their overnight shift. The then Attorney General, William Barr, publicly stated the situation was appalling and demanded a full investigation. What followed revealed a cascade of negligence, ignored risk warnings, and the disappearance of crucial video footage. Although the two guards were charged with conspiracy and falsifying prison records, they avoided jail time through a plea deal that imposed only community service. No senior official from the Bureau of Prisons, BOP, was ultimately held accountable or fired for gross negligence. The Bureau of Prisons labeled the event a tragic coincidence. The public, however, vehemently rejected the official narrative. The phrase "Epstein didn't kill himself" was not just a viral meme. It became a lasting symbol of institutional skepticism and the widespread belief that powerful associates had orchestrated his death to avoid the full exposure of their crimes and complicity in a federal trial. For the survivors, his death was an irreparable loss of the opportunity to confront Epstein in court and to force the truth to emerge under oath. The silence at the Metropolitan Correctional Center was interpreted not as a desperate, personal act, but as the circle of power closing a door to protect the elite. On July 2, 2020, federal agents arrested Ghislaine Maxwell in Bradford, New Hampshire. The indictment described her as the key partner and senior operator in Jeffrey Epstein's criminal enterprise, a woman who turned seduction into control. Her trial began in November 2021 at the federal courthouse in New York and examined in detail the manipulation tactics that had enabled the scheme. Jury selection was delicate, shaped by the intense publicity and the pressure to ensure fairness. 4 courageous survivors testified, describing Maxwell's systematic method of gaining trust, creating a glamorous sense of safety, and then leading young women to Epstein. They said she used her charm, education, and social sophistication to lower defenses and make exploitation feel disguised as opportunity. Each testimony added precision to a chilling pattern of recruitment and control, leaving no doubt that Maxwell was not a passive observer but an active architect of abuse. The defense portrayed her as a scapegoat, the last person left to answer for Epstein's crimes, arguing that his death had created an unfair need to convict someone. They attacked the credibility of witnesses and claimed selective prosecution. Yet the jury saw through the narrative. After weeks of testimony and evidence, they recognized a deliberate and organized system of predation operating for years, hidden behind luxury and influence. Maxwell's status had shielded her, but her actions revealed intent. She was not a victim of circumstance. She was part of the design. On December 29, 2021, Ghislaine Maxwell was found guilty on 5 of 6 counts, including sex trafficking and conspiracy to transport minors for illegal acts. In June 2022, she was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. The length of the sentence reflected the scale of her crimes, her central role, and her lack of remorse. The judge called her actions a crime against human dignity, emphasizing that wealth and privilege offer no protection from accountability. Her conviction became the first definitive verdict in the Epstein saga and redirected the focus toward his wider network. Court documents and flight logs listed hundreds of names: politicians, financiers, academics, artists, many still sealed under judicial order. Their secrecy fueled endless speculation about who else might have known, enabled, or ignored the crimes. Maxwell's legal team filed an appeal, challenging both the trial and the evidence. Yet her conviction stands as a legal milestone and a public message. Power cannot buy immunity when victims refuse to be silent. The pursuit of justice now extends beyond Epstein, forcing the world to confront those who helped sustain his empire of manipulation. After Epstein's death and Maxwell's conviction, the investigation expanded into a broader examination of the institutions that had provided the financial and social infrastructure allowing his scheme to operate unchecked for decades. Epstein's estate faced a flood of civil lawsuits filed by more than 100 victims and survivors. This legal pressure led to the creation of a victims' compensation fund that distributed over $100 million, a substantial financial reparation, but not enough to heal the trauma. The goal was to offer material justice to those who suffered, regardless of criminal outcomes. Attention soon turned to the financial enablers. In 2023, the Attorney General of the U.S. Virgin Islands, where Epstein owned a private island, reached a landmark $75 million settlement with J.P. Morgan Chase, his longtime bank. The lawsuit accused the bank of profiting from Epstein's crimes and deliberately ignoring multiple, obvious red flags. These included massive money, transfers to young women in large cash, withdrawals that should have triggered federal suspicious activity reports. Internal documents showed that senior executives at J.P. Morgan were allegedly aware of Epstein's suspicious activity and failed to conduct the required due diligence under anti-money laundering laws. Prosecutors called it not negligence but a choice, profit over ethics. Deutsche Bank, which served Epstein after he left J.P. Morgan, paid another $75 million settlement, signaling a broader failure of compliance within global finance. Both banks denied formal wrongdoing but pledged internal reforms under heavy regulatory pressure. Other elite institutions, notably the MIT Media Lab, were forced to return Epstein's donations and face public outrage over their Ties to the convicted predator. The lab's director resigned, and the university promised new ethics standards for donors. Museums, universities, and charities announced reviews of their donation protocols, attempting to erase the stain of association. Yet the effort failed in the court of public opinion, which demanded transparency over silence. In January 2024, newly unsealed court documents reignited headlines, revealing connections and interactions that extended far beyond Maxwell's immediate circle. The Epstein case remains a distorted mirror reflecting the system that enabled it. A network of financial, social, and political power where privilege acted as armor and institutions failed as moral guardians. It exposed how extreme wealth can purchase silence, impunity, and complicity from those meant to uphold integrity. Epstein's legacy is not only the crimes he committed, but the systemic collapse that allowed them. The pursuit of accountability now focuses on dismantling the structures that once protected the predator, ensuring that his empire of exploitation becomes a catalyst for lasting reform.